This is Ryan Pierce, host of Completely Serious. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
This is Daniel Poppy, host of How to Write Good here on Public House Media. I just want to thank you for listening to the following broadcast brought to you by Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope that you'll come check out my show, How to Write Good, the writing show that is not about writing. A new show of How to Write Good comes out every Wednesday, so don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of How to Write Good. Again, thanks for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
The latest headlines.
The Houston Astros, the defending World Series champions, got better, adding Garrett Cole.
The insightful interviews.
Rick Saratella, NFL Draft Bible. With how much emphasis is put on the position, yet how many over the last couple of years we've had questions. Why do we put such an emphasis on drafting a quarterback number one overall?
The bottom line is there's not enough good quarterbacks to go around. And I think with the new CBA, it's really a low-risk gamble now. If you look at the playoff teams, the common denominator, good quarterback play.
The hottest takes.
I think the guy to blame is the one guy who hasn't left yet. I think Russell Westbrook is one of the bigger problems in Oklahoma City.
Can all be found on Press Row. Broadcasting is part of the Public House Media Network. Here's your host.
It doesn't matter what your name is.
Christian Heimall.
What's up, everybody? Welcome on Press Row here on this Thursday, December 20th, 2018. Last show of 2018 here, and we've got a good one for you. Jon Meoli of the Baltimore Sun, he will join us in just a little bit. We don't talk a lot about the Baltimore Orioles, but they have made some big changes. They have tried to turn that franchise around. Mike Elias and Brandon Hyde joining the fold. What does it mean for the immediate and long-term future of Birdland there down in Charm City? We'll talk with Jon about that in just a little bit. Of course, your listener questions as well, all coming up. But want to begin this show, as we do almost every show. You guys know I love talking baseball, but big news, especially when there's big news, I love talking about it even more. And it came across yesterday on Wednesday, the official agreement signed between Major League Baseball and the Cuban Baseball Federation that allows a safe and legal path to Major League Baseball for Cuban players. Everybody knows the story. If you followed baseball at any point in your life, you know the embargo against these players. One of the biggest things, Fidel Castro, one of the biggest things he was so prominent of was creating the greatest and most powerful baseball country on the planet, and made it illegal for any Cuban players to make their way to the United States. And there are countless stories about these players trying to make it. Yasiel Puig, Yoan Moncada, Jose Iglesias, Jose Abreu. You even go back further, players like Luis Tiant, El Duque, Orlando Hernandez and his brother. So many of them. I personally know a number of players whose families emigrated from Cuba to try to give them a better life, and how scary it must be for them to now know that there is a safe passage to Major League Baseball for these incredibly talented players is great. And for those of you who maybe didn't dive into all the details of it, give you just a brief synopsis. Basically, what this means now is that Major League Baseball and the Cuban Baseball Federation, the FCB, have reached an agreement that is very similar to the other foreign leagues. For instance, the Japanese Professional League, the Chinese, and the Korean Baseball Organization, which basically says there are certain players that the FCB, the Cuban Baseball Federation, would have to release if they want to sign with a Major League Baseball club. Those players have to be at least 25 years old and have at least 6 or more years of playing experience to be qualified as foreign professionals. The FCB then releases those players, and if they sign, they can sign with a Major League club. And if they do, pursuant to the agreement, Major League Baseball will pay the Cuban Baseball Federation a release fee calculated the same way they do for the Japanese players, Korean players, anybody else who comes from these foreign professionals. So it's between 15 and 20% of the total guaranteed value for Major League contracts, plus 25% of the signing bonus and 25% of the signing bonus for minor league contracts. Younger players than 25 are eligible, but they would be under minor league contracts. So, for instance, when you look at what the guaranteed value of Major League Baseball contracts of a Major League contract is, like, for instance, you look at Joe Kelly, let's go to Nathan Eovaldi, who had a $64 million contract guaranteed. 20% of that, up to 20% of that, could be paid if he were a Cuban baseball player, would be paid to the Cuban Baseball Federation. So these incredibly talented players like Yoan Moncada, as I mentioned, Yasiel Puig, and others who have had to go through terrible hardships and struggles and scares to even try to get to the United States for a chance to play. Players who are harassed, who are threatened, their families are threatened. This is a great thing because it provides safe passage, it gives an opportunity, and these tremendously talented baseball players can come and play on the best stage in the world. I love this. I think it's a great thing for baseball. I'm so excited, and I cannot wait to see how the rest of this turns out for Major League Baseball. You just look at some of the quotes. Guys like Yoan Moncada saying, quote, "I'm extremely happy that an agreement has been reached. It's good to know that players will not have to take a risk or be in danger to try and get to the United States to play baseball." Jose Abreu, to this date, I am still harassed. The next generation of Cuban baseball players will be able to sign a major league contract while in Cuba. They'll be able to keep their earnings as any other player in the world. They'll be able to return to Cuba, share with their families, and they'll be able to play the sport they love against the best players in the world without fear and trepidation. Great day for Cuban baseball players. 100% agree. Because, again, it's not just that we get to see these talented players. It's not just that these players don't have to risk themselves, but they get to go back home. They get to share this with their loved ones, with their families, with their country that, for all intents and purposes, prior to this agreement, were shunning some of these players because they left their country. So I think it's great for baseball. I think it's great for Cuba. Of course, there will be political ramifications, and this goes very much to the tremendous work that has been done to repair U.S. and Cuban relations over the last 5 years or so. So it's great to see. I'm really excited about it, and I can't wait to see what the future generation of Cuban baseball players has for us here in the United States. The other part about it is it makes things really interesting for the hot stove now. It makes things really exciting when you talk about the international monetary pool that's in Major League Baseball, when you talk about free agency, because we're all talking about now the latest posting for the Japanese Baseball League and some of these talented players that are coming over, similar to Yu Darvish or a Hideki Matsui. So there's a lot that is out there, and it is really, really exciting and entertaining, and just adding these Cuban players to the mix will make it even more entertaining. So we'll just be interested to see what happens as this moves forward over the next few years, but for the most part, and realistically, the important part is this is a great thing for baseball as a sport, these players for their livelihoods, and of course for U.S.-Cuban domestic international relationships. So really excited about that and really glad to see it all. As always, you guys can get in touch with the show if you want. You can email us, pressrowphm@gmail.com. You can tweet us and Instagram as well, @pressrowphm. Check us out on Facebook, Press Row by Public House Media. And if you want to subscribe, we certainly hope you have already. Otherwise, you're just listening to the random show. That's fine, too. Nothing wrong with that, but don't miss a single episode. Head on to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or even, of course, our brand new website, publichousemedia.org. When we come back, Jon Meoli covers the Orioles for the Baltimore Sun. We'll talk everything Birds coming up in just a little bit and what to expect for the future of this team that is going to be forced to compete with the Red Sox, Yankees, and maybe even the Rays for some years to come. We'll see what their plans are coming up in a little bit. You're on Press Row, broadcasting as part of the Public House Media Network.
Want to be part of the show? Go to Facebook and search Press Row Podcast-Public House Media, or find us on Twitter and Instagram at Press Row PHM. You can also email the program, pressrowphm@gmail.com.
This is Bryce Burge, host of Your Soccer Passport here on Public House Media. After this episode, come join us on a trip around the soccer world as we discuss club and country every Tuesday. Stamp your soccer passport by subscribing on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your Public House Media podcasts. And thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
This is Press Row with Christian Heimall, a Public House Media podcast.
Well, life on the farm is kind of laid back. Ain't much an old country boy like me can't hack. It's early to rise, early in the sack. I thank God I'm a country boy. Well, a simple kind of life.
Welcome back on Press Row here on this December 20th, 2018. For those of you who've listened to the show, and I guess most of you now probably do know this, went to high school outside of Baltimore, so the show does have a lot of following in that Baltimore area, and it's not often we talk about the Orioles. We do get a lot of you that send in questions about the Orioles and the Redskins and the Ravens. So our gift to you here this holiday season is to talk a little bit about the Baltimore Orioles. And to help us do that, Jon Meoli covers the team for the Baltimore Sun, was in the winter meetings last week in Las Vegas with the team. Jon, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I know it's going to be a present to everybody. That's exciting for me.
Well, I think for a lot of Orioles fans, there's a lot of hope, going into 2019 with the new GM and now Brandon Hyde. So tell us a little bit about where the Orioles currently sit now with regards to their new regime, so to speak, the new heads of baseball operations and their new manager.
Yeah. So last month, they finalized the hiring of Mike Elias, who was the assistant general manager of the Houston Astros. He had a big role in their scouting operation, first amateur-wise, and then moving on to international scouting and player development. Took him a month, but he ended up hiring Brandon Hyde from the bench coach from the Chicago Cubs. And melding those two organizations really gives the Orioles the two models, really, the two organizations that they're modeling it after, for lack of a better word, the Cubs and the Astros, who basically tore it down and were just terrible though they were terrible unintentionally, and then they were terrible intentionally, so that they could kind of execute this plan of, getting high draft picks and building through the farm and trading off all the veterans. The two teams that actually did that to fruition and won the World Series are the Cubs and then the Astros, and they've taken what they believe are key pieces from both of those operations and installed them into their own. So I was reading, kind of reading back as to what, how people reacted, even going back to last week from the winter meetings, all this stuff. Brandon Hyde's press conference was Monday, and it's kind of reading some of the fan reactions, some of the consensus online, and someone pointed out, like, no one's saying anything bad about this stuff. Like, what's going on? Are these the Orioles we know? And, like, they're going to lose 100+ games again. It's going to be really, really bad for if not 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. That's what these people came from were. And yet no one has a bad word to say about it. I think that just kind of speaks to the lack of hope, even as the Orioles were trying to contend, that happened around here.
Is that something to do with the fact that, this is an organization that has, for lack of a better term, disappointed over the last, 5, 20 years, even with their lack of playoff appearances? Or is it more kind of being resigned to the fact that given this season, given 2018, where you had the Red Sox and Yankees both win 100 games, you had the Tampa Bay Rays that seemingly sold off everybody and still won 90 games, that this just isn't a division that right now, in the near and immediate future for the Orioles, is one that they can realistically compete in? So they've kind of resigned themselves to the fact that, yes, we will be bad for a couple of years, but given the guys that we've brought in, this is something that could happen and be very good in the future.
Well, I think that's definitely part of it. And when you look at the trajectory of when this team went from being, a basement team to clawing their way to the playoffs to being, the 2014 team had a realistic claim of being the best team in baseball that year and ended up running into a buzzsaw in Kansas City in the ALCS. But those teams took advantage of the opposite of what's happening now. The Yankees weren't really the Yankees. The Red Sox weren't really the Red Sox consistently. And they took advantage of that. And I always go back to, granted, it was my first year covering the team on a full-time basis. I'd been in the city for, a decade before that and been just kind of following around. But the 2016 season was really kind of where it all turned. I saw things turning because that team made the playoffs. That team was in first place for most of the year. But you go to Camden Yards in September as they're playing these games against teams that are ultimately playoff teams along with them, and the stadium's half full. And it just kind of struck me that everyone kind of realized that what the Orioles were doing, even if it was working, which most of the time that year it did, it wasn't really sticking with people. They weren't really buying it at that point. In 2017, there was a lot more sentiment like that. What's this team doing, trading for Tim Beckham? What's this team doing trying to compete again? This isn't going to work long term. And then obviously craters last year. So I think that it's the way that the game is set up at this point. Teams fans, I guess, root for teams and organizations more than the players. They want to see, a system in place. They want to see a farm system. They want to see player development. They want to know that it's going to be good in 5 years, even if it's not good now. And the teams that are really good are the ones that win now, and they know it's going to be good in 5 years. But the Orioles didn't have either of those. So I think they're trying to build the first part so they can get to the second part. That was a really long answer.
No, it takes a long one for this organization. We're talking with Jon Meoli, who covers the Baltimore Orioles for the Baltimore Sun. They're in a very interesting position with regards to, for Mike Elias and for Brandon Hyde to build this roster seemingly and maybe even literally from the ground up. There are only 4 signed contracts guaranteed for 2019. All 4 of them are 31 and above, and they're multi-year contracts right now. Andrew Cashner obviously has the team option for 2020, but there's $60 million tied up on just 4 contracts here in 2019. So it almost is kind of a blank slate for this team, given how many guys are arbitration or pre-arbitration eligible on this roster.
Yeah, and that's where, when we talk about going forward, what so-and-so's job is going to be. Brandon Hyde's not going to be judged on whether they lose, or what I guess you'd look at it positively, whether they win 62 games or 57 games. That's not going to make a difference in the long term, but his job is to make it so that some of these players who are here now are here when they're good again. Is Cedric Mullins going to be an everyday center fielder versus a guy who, gets stuck in the big half of platoon, which still makes him a valuable player, but not an everyday major league center fielder. Can Trey Mancini be the guy he was as a rookie as opposed to the guy who was wavering? Is this the guy, Brandon Hyde's a former catcher. Is he the one who's going to get Francisco kind of the snap out of whatever funk he got into? Those are the things he's going to be evaluated on, because when you look back at those Astros teams, the only 2 players who were on the major league roster from the 2011 season when there's only one player on the major league roster from the 2011 season who ended up winning the World Series in 2017. That was Jose Altuve, and he's the MVP. They drafted George Springer that year before. Dallas Keuchel was in the mix, but it takes a whole overhaul. It takes a lot of years. It takes a lot of churn to get where they want to go. So it's kind of on these guys, like you said, the blank slate to figure out who you're going to write in pen and who you're going to, let play out the string and then get rid of them when they start costing too much money or get too good. That's where this kind of next year or so comes.
And then especially, you mentioned some of the younger guys, but you throw in a player the caliber of like a Gabriele Noah, who was a South Atlantic League Pitcher of the Year a few years ago. There's a number of options there for this team from a youth standpoint, from a future standpoint. But any plans, has there been any discussion about what 2019's roster, because one of the biggest question marks heading into towards the end of the 2018 season was what in the world was going on with the Andrew Jones situation the Adam Jones situation, and what does that mean for his future with this Orioles organization, a place that it seemed as though he never wanted to leave. So what is the latest with Adam Jones, and what is really latest for the Orioles in terms of the immediate 2019 future?
Well, in terms of Adam Jones, Mike Elias said at the winter meetings that, while he has a ton of respect for what Adam Jones did for this team and this community and in the city, and knew about that before he got here, he wasn't really going to treat him like he was anything different from another free agent this year, just given where the Orioles are and where their spending is. So he said they're going to be probably slower and later to the free agent market as it is, just from a general, non-specific player stance. So I think Adam Jones has got to be out there looking and saying, where can I get a deal? Where can I get somebody who's going to, give me multiple years? You look at Andrew McCutchen, 3 years for $50 million. I'm sure Adam Jones wouldn't even let you finish the sentence before he said yes to that.
Yeah.
But the longer that, we've seen in the market these last few years is that teams that really want a guy are going to give a guy market rate, and everyone else is just going to wait, and they'll get a type of player that they want for a bargain. So he just can't really get caught up in that mix. And in terms of what the Orioles are going to look like in 2019, I think they're going to look a lot like what they looked like last year. And they're not going to go out and make any significant free agent additions that are going to help this team. Michael Elias said point blank that, part of the attraction to signing free agents, if they end up doing that, is signing guys that they know they could trade. So you're signing here knowing that if you have 3 good months as the Orioles starting, say, second baseman or maybe one of their 2 or 3 catchers that they're going to use, if you have 3 good months, you're not going to finish the season here. You're basically signing here knowing that. And I think guys might want a little more security than that. So at a position like shortstop, they'll take, they took a couple of Rule 5 players in Richie Martin and Drew Jackson. They'll let them try to battle that out. He said Jonathan Villar is going to be the everyday shortstop, but there's a lot of flux kind of there in the middle infield. They're just going to let this play out. They're going to see if any of these players that they have are of the caliber they need, or try to get them to that point before they go out and try to really add players that will make them better.
He's Jon Meoli, covers the Baltimore Orioles for the Baltimore Sun. One of the teams that really won't get talked a lot about here this offseason, but with the names that they've brought in, of course, Michael Elias and now Brandon Hyde as their manager, hopefully, at least if you're in Birdland, hopefully as a team that we'll talk about for years to come. John, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much, and enjoy the holidays.
Appreciate having me on. Thank you.
All right, Jon Meoli of the Baltimore Sun. It's going to be a rough year for Orioles fans, and for a lot of you listeners out there. I know you guys are big Orioles fans, but they're one of those teams that they don't get covered a lot, and they've done some interesting things here. Mike Elias, I thought was a great hire. I like Brandon Hyde. I like the molding of mindsets and the molding of cultures that they're trying to do, and it's going to be a rough few years, to be honest, for the Orioles, just because the Yankees and the Red Sox are going to be talented for many more years. And they're always going to be talented when they're spending the kind of money that they are. One last break, and when we come back, your listener questions, as well as one of the coolest things that I saw yesterday as part of National Sign Day. I know we got a lot of coverage, but need to give love where love is due. So hope you stick around. We're back after this. You're on Press Row, broadcasting as part of the Public House Media Network.
Listen to every episode and get the latest shows sent right to you. Subscribe to Press Row on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spreaker.com, and Stitcher.com. Or visit us online at www.thephmedia.com.
Hey everyone, I'm Matt Coyne.
And I'm Jake Holmes.
And we host the Friday edition of the Cheap Seats, presented by Squadcast.fm. Make sure you join us every week, because we're going to be recapping the biggest headlines from the past week in sports, as well as preview the upcoming weekend so that you know what to talk about, what to expect at your tailgate and viewing parties.
Yeah, and don't forget to vote on our poll question on Facebook at the Cheap Seats by Public House Media. And please subscribe to the Cheap Seat on Apple and Google Podcasts, as well as Spotify and more, so you never miss an episode.
Yeah, a new episode. It comes out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But you can only catch the C Team with Jake Holmes and Matt Coyne here on Fridays, way up here in the Cheap Seats, presented by Squadcast.fm here on Public House Media.
This is Press Row with Christian Heimall, a Public House Media podcast.
Close up shop here on Press Row for the 2018 calendar year. We will be off next week, but we'll be back January 3rd. Brand new season, brand new year to talk about. We'll talk college football playoff when we get there as well, and preview that championship game as well in a couple of weeks. But want to enjoy the holidays. Hope you guys do as well. Big thanks to Jon Meoli for joining us on the program. Don't forget, you can always get in touch with the show every single week, even through the holiday. Twitter and Instagram at PressRowPHM. You can email the show, PressRowPHM@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Press Row Podcast by Public House Media. Get to your listener questions as we do every single week. Joe in North Carolina, the Panthers shutting down Cam Newton. Is this a good move for the Panthers? Yes, 1,000%. This is, the team is not out of the playoff race technically, but realistically they are. Newton has not looked the same. It looks as though he needs probably more surgery. And this is kind of the smartest thing in the world. They've lost 6 consecutive games. At one point, they were 6-2. They were looking like they were in the hunt and one of the top teams in football, but they've really struggled, especially with Cam with his shoulder. He's missed a lot of practice lately, and so this has to be a move that was just a complete and total, really no-brainer for the Carolina Panthers. So not surprised at all by it, not disappointed in it. Maybe a little disappointed that it didn't happen sooner because he just has not looked like himself, and he's been upset. He even was asked over the weekend after the loss and said, I wish I could say what the injury is because I don't really know what it is either. No matter how much you push, no matter how much you ice, the anti-inflammatory you take, trust me, I've done it. There's not a night that goes by without me getting some type of work done on my arm. You just don't have the strength. That to me sounds like a guy who needs more surgery, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he misses all of next season because this sounds somewhat similar to the whole Andrew Luck thing that we experienced and him having to miss 2 seasons. So hopefully he'll be okay. Hopefully things will change and we can see Cam Newton back on the field sooner rather than later because he is one of the more exciting players in the NFL. Speaking of NFL quarterbacks, Eric in California, Nathan Peterman signed to the Raiders practice squad. When will he make the NFL? When will he make the active roster? I don't know. I mean, look, it's him and A.J. McCarron backing up Derek Carr. He got cut a month ago. He is one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. His quarterback rating was 30.7, worst in the NFL this season. 4 appearances. He was 44 of 81, 1 touchdown, 7 interceptions. In his career, he has 12 picks on 130 attempts. That's 1 interception for every 11 throws. What's insane about this, and maybe not insane considering the situation currently, is that Jon Gruden, his new head coach in Oakland, at one point prior to the draft, said Nathan Peterman was the most pro-ready quarterback prior to 2017. This is in a draft that included Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, and Mitchell Trubisky. So he'll probably see the active roster this week, if not next week for the regular season. But going further, the Raiders are so weird. Jon Gruden, I have no idea what he's doing. Derek Carr, are they going to get rid of him? I have no idea. But this is just one of the most insane things to watch in the NFL is to see how this team, the Oakland Raiders, continuously go from being... You just continuously get shocked by them. They trade Khalil Mack in week 1. They get rid of Amari Cooper. They don't, you talk about Jon Gruden not knowing who his quarterback is going to be. I mean, this is just a weird organization right now, so I'm not entirely shocked to see Nathan Peterman sign, but at the same time, I don't understand it. I don't get it whatsoever. So we'll see what happens, but oh my goodness, it's weird to see that Nathan Peterman still has a job here in the NFL, considering, again, he has thrown 1 pick every 11 throws in his entire NFL career. As always, we appreciate you. Last one, actually, here. Missed this one. Joseph in New Hampshire, should the Patriots be concerned? Should Patriots fans be worried about the playoffs? A lot of NFL questions. Well, it kind of makes sense considering where we are. Yes, the Patriots absolutely should be concerned because they are not playing like a team that is capable of winning the AFC, let alone the Super Bowl. They will win their division. It's pretty obvious at this point. They just have to win 1 game. It's that simple. Patriots have to win either against the Bills or the Jets. Those are their 2 teams standing in their way here for their AFC East title. However, them getting a first-round bye is very, very difficult. It seems and I believe, I can't remember what the number was, but Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, when they have a first-round bye, I believe are undefeated in the playoffs. But it's really, really disturbing to watch. I watched all of that Steelers game over the weekend because, honestly, this is one of the it was very weird to see Tom Brady struggle with some of the throws that he made. The last drive, 3 very bad throws. It was, yes, 15 yards. and you were at the 23 or whatever it was, but you didn't need to be bombing it to the end zone every single time. And he missed badly on every single throw. He was trying to throw it away every single time, and that's not the Tom Brady that we're used to. So I don't know if that's I don't know if that's him declining. I don't want to say that. I don't know if it's the Steelers doing a great job, because honestly they've never done a good job against the Patriots, or if it's just this team isn't there and there's something wrong within the locker room. But I would be very much concerned if I'm a Patriots fan about this team not playing that deep into January here this year. As always, appreciate you guys sending in your questions. You can do so throughout the week whenever you want to on our social media pages. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review all across any and all platforms. Want to give you the great thing. I know for those of you who didn't get a chance to see it, I hope you do go check it out. Google Cooper Dawson, because this was one of the coolest things about National Signing Day for football yesterday. High schooler from Hanahan High School in South Carolina brought up his best buddy, Kingsley Feynman. Kingsley suffers born with cerebral palsy, is quadriplegic, has an in-home aide to help him with everything that he does. And Cooper Dawson had Kingsley help him with announcing where he was going to go play, saying that he was going to go to Syracuse instead of hometown or in-state team Clemson, and even UCF was considered that. So it was really cool to watch. Go check out the video. And this is some of the things that's just really, really cool to do. So it was really, really neat. It was really cool to see, really heartwarming. And the whole story is great. If you have a chance to go check it out, Cooper Dawson and Kingsley, it was just really, really cool. A guy that understands, he gets it. You know, he's a young kid and he gets it. Just to be able to help someone who is unfortunate and can't do everything. So, yeah, it's really, really, really neat to see. And again, the whole story is just really, really cool to watch. So good on Cooper Dawson. Really, really cool to see that. Good job by you, kid. All right, big thanks to Jon Meoli of the Baltimore Sun for checking in with us. Big thanks to you guys as well for listening as well and subscribing on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, as well as publichousemedia.org. Don't forget to check out our social media pages, Twitter and Instagram, at PressRowPHM. You can find me on Twitter as well, at Chris Heimall, ChrisheiMall. And until 2019, guys, we'll see you on Press Row. Happy holidays, everybody.